Hi guys, welcome back to the Johnny Gets Cash YouTube channel, and this is the latest episode on the Fourtrak. Now, as you know, I've been very busy in the workshop with other things lately, and I'm doing this Fourtrak as my own project in between those paid jobs, so it does take a while to get from stage to stage sometimes with this Fourtrak. But anyway, this week I've cleared a bit of time to push this project a little bit further down the line. But before I get started with the work I'm going to be doing, I just want to walk around the truck and show you what's happened since the last time you saw it. Now, you may remember, so far you've seen me do everything to the chassis, completely refurbished it, dropped the body back on, the engine's been freshened up, all of that sort of stuff. So what I would consider the hardest part of the project is done, i.e. all the custom fabrication on the what was rotten body. Well, now I'm moving on to the bodywork phase. So since you last saw this truck, you may remember this quarter panel had quite a lot of damage, had some sort of impact here, and I've had to cut out a lot of it and weld in some new metal. Now, that is not anywhere near finished yet, but it's further than when you last saw it. So that's obviously all in high build primer at the moment, ready to be guide coated and flatted and have a few little bits of filler put into it, just to make sure it's perfect. I've got the fat overarch set on it at the moment, but obviously, as I mentioned before, the seal between the arch and the body is crusty. That's going to get changed. I've just got that on to make sure it all aligns perfectly, and you can see down here with the new custom sill, once that new rubber seal is on there, that'll be perfect. So that's happened since you last saw it. Things like the wing mirrors, the wipers, that's all been removed, basically so I can start moving around the truck and getting this ready to have the new paint put on. But of course, I've got to fix damage first. So that quarter panel needs to be sorted. There's some damage on the tailgate, a little bit of a push impact there. There isn't too much other damage elsewhere. Again, I've got this arch just sitting on to make sure everything's as it should be, and it is. There's a few chips and flakes on the edge of this door, but obviously everything's getting sprayed, so that's not a problem. These Riviera graphics and the Fourtrak, these are the gel badges from the Riviera 2 spec truck, so they are correct, but I've never been a fan of them. So what I want to do is use some heat and get all of these off, because I'm going to be using different graphics entirely for when this truck is finished. So they'll be coming off as well. Any bits of overspray you're seeing, again, don't worry about that, because the car is getting a blow over, so it doesn't really matter on this original paint that there's a bit of overspray. So basically what you're going to see me do in this video is carry on with a bit of the prep work on this rear quarter to make that as good as possible. Remove the old Fourtrak badging and the Riviera 2 stuff, because I say they're all gel badges, they're not very nice, they're going to come off. And basically get this thing ready to receive a little bit of paint. Now, at the moment where I am in the UK, it's absolutely freezing, and as I said before, I am not a professional spray shop. I don't have the professional heated facilities that some places do. So for me, weather, like freezing cold weather for instance, does make a huge difference to what I do. So I don't think I'll be laying down any paint anytime soon, but if I can get the truck absolutely ready to receive paint, then that's as good as I can hope for. And as I say, I've got so much work on in the workshop that to just give myself a week was a bit of a push anyway. So I've got a week to prep this. I'm not going to try and go mad on it. I'll get the prep done, then move back onto the normal workshop comings and goings. So anyway, that's hopefully brought you up to speed and give you a bit of an idea of where things are and where I'm going to be going this episode. So I'm going to crack on. Okay, so I've just flatted down that high build. Hopefully you can hear me all right, because the local bell ringers seem to be on one this morning. So any weird noises in the background, you can thank the local campanologist crew, because they are ringing those bells like it's going out of fashion. Anyway, I flatted this panel down, and 99% of it is absolutely fine. I'm really happy with it. I knew there was a few little areas I was going to revisit. We've got a couple of high spots, and again, a few low spots. You can see where my guide coat remains. It's to be expected. That's the purpose of guide coat on high build. So I'm going to do a little tiny bit of filling, very fine work. When that goes off, I can flat that down, shoot the whole thing in high build again, and go through the guide coat process again just to be sure. But the reason I'm doing that is because I've drawn this line. You can just see this pencil line. That is where the overarch sits. Now, anything beyond that point, that way, I haven't been too fussy about, as you can probably tell, because it won't be seen. But anything this side of the line, you will see. So that's why I'm being a little bit fussy about these body lines, because I want them to be right. So basically, time for a little bit of filling. As a side note, just to highlight how cold it is in here, I've dried this panel down now, but when I was wet flatting, say I was working from left to right, I'd start my wet flatting, everything would be wet, I'd be working across. By the time I got mid-panel, I'd fill my work here just to make sure everything was smooth, and I thought, oh, that's rough. What it was, the water that was remaining on the panel was actually freezing on the panel as I was working. So that is how cold it is in the workshop at the moment. So you can probably see why I'm not reckoning to paint properly anytime soon. So that's just a little example of the temperatures I'm dealing with here. So now that's enough said about that. I'm going to crack on, do a little bit of filling work. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that filler to go off, I thought I'd investigate this rear door. Now obviously I've stripped it down, you've seen that already, and I said before there's a bit of impact damage here. Well, I was aware there was a little bit of bubbling rust underneath it, so I thought I'd better investigate it and check it out. Well, quite typically in Fourtrak fashion, if you dig a little bit, you're going to find a lot. So what I've found is the bottom edge of this tailgate from the corner pretty much to about halfway, which is where the damage is, just above this rot hole here. It was pretty horrible because this is actually triple skinned here, because the door skin folds over an inner piece of metal. So anyway, what I've done is cut out all the particularly bad rot. From this point onwards, it's fine. Weirdly, that section there was pretty healthy. But what I've done is cut out all the bad stuff. I'm going to actually take a bit more out looking at it, but when all the really bad rot is out, I'm going to chuck a load of converter on it, and then what I'm going to do is cut out the two worst sections of this tailgate, flush weld some new metal in there. Then when that's done, I will be able to put in a strip of new metal on the inside here, and then join it all together quite neatly underneath. It will never get seen, but you know, if I know there's rot and corrosion inside a door, I've got to do something about it. But it was definitely one of those situations where I thought, oh, it'd be nice to get prepping this dent and get that ready to be sorted while that other filler's going off. But no, what I found is some welding required. So absolutely classic Fourtrak issues, but I'll do it, I'll get it sorted, and hopefully eventually it will look as good as new. I'm back on the quarter panel now, so that filler has thoroughly dried and been knocked down. In all the areas where the guide coat indicated it needed doing, the panel feels to the touch absolutely perfect. How good it's going to look, I'm not 100% sure at the moment. I'm hoping pretty good because, as I say, it feels fantastic. Anyway, because it is so cold in here, what I'm doing is using the infrared heater to heat up the whole quarter panel before I lay down some more high build primer. So that's going to be 2 to 3 coats, I think, but very, very dusty coats because it's so cold. I really don't want to get any runs. But again, trying to mitigate that as much as possible with the infrared heater. So I'm going to let it heat up a little bit and then I'll lay down that primer. And that quarter panel is now in high build once again. It is looking absolutely perfect, so really happy with that. So it's time now to move back to this tailgate. You saw me cutting out those bits and pieces of rot from the bottom there. So I'm going to deal with the welding first before doing the body damage. Now, the eagle-eyed, and most of you might have noticed there's a bit of a push dent here just under the swage line. I'll also be dealing with that when I do the bodywork. But really, aside from the lower half of that tailgate, it's actually not in bad nick, so I'm not too distraught about having to spend a bit of time repairing it. First stage though, of course, is dealing with the metal work. So I'm going to crack on, cut a bit of metal now, weld it in, get everything ground back and as close to being proper as possible before giving it a little scad of filler. Okay, that's a little bit of welding done on the tailgate. You can see I've remade the corner and that main patch beneath this bit of damage here. I've also redone the bottom edge in a couple of places because when I got looking at it, there was a little bit more needed cutting out because I wasn't totally happy with it. But essentially, that is all in there now. The way I've done it, you saw me remake the inner part of the door first, which is that little bent panel I made for the corner. And then I've put a skin on the outside and a strip on the underside here. Now, from factory, that would have been one piece of metal which comes down, U-bend, and then goes on there. I don't have the ability or the tools to make that piece here, so what I've done, as I say, made a separate skin for the outside and this strip here. It's all been welded together underneath and ground back, and so essentially this is now one piece. So from the factory, the top of this piece here, this strip I've made, that's all seam sealer. So what I'm going to do is use seam sealer to recreate the factory finish. But before I do that, I'm going to lay in some converter so that it soaks down into the fold, as it were, of this metal. Just a belt and braces approach really to save any future corrosion. And when it's thoroughly dried, I can use seam sealer across the top of that strip and around this corner to join into the factory seam sealer here, and it should look pretty flush. On the outside, it looks pretty smooth, but as always with bodywork welding, there is a little bit of filler required just to make it perfect. So that's going to be scoured across there, and of course I need to do a little bit of filling work on this bit of damage here, and that little dent there, I've pushed it out slightly, but it still needs more work. So what I need to do now that all the welding is finished is get the filler out, get back into bodywork mode, and make the bottom of this tailgate look as smooth and fresh as possible. So that is the next thing I'm going to tackle. Okay, so I am only focusing on the lower part of this tailgate at the moment. You may see a slight dent somewhere around here. I'm not overly fussed about that because the spare wheel holder does bolt on these 4 bolts here, and it hides a lot of this area of the tailgate. What I am focused on, as I say, is the lower part of the tailgate, especially from about here across, because yeah, a bit of this is covered by the spare wheel, but this is really on show. So what I was doing just now with that large block was sort of getting a nice level key on everything, and now it's been cleaned off and panel wiped, you can probably see the low spots where the sandpaper on that block didn't touch. So we've got a fairly large low spot there, something like that actually, and we've got another one here. There's a little dink there which is low. The dent that was above that damage we saw originally, that is obviously low. So these are all low spots. Everything else isn't too bad. Obviously that repair I did over here, that's low, to be expected. The repair along here isn't too bad, but it will need a little bit of filler. Nothing else too bad. Where the number plate mounting system bolts through this tailgate, the actual holes themselves are slightly raised, but again, I'm not that worried because they're totally hidden by the number plate holder, so I'm not going to go out of my way to try and sort those out. This being such a large panel, I was trying to push some of these dents out, but it does oil can quite a bit because it is a large panel, so I'm going to have to try and get some heat into that before doing any filler or anything to see if I can overcome this these low spots, because there's no point filling everything if you just oil can the panel and it just it will then no longer be flat. So I've got a bit of thinking to do actually. I will need to have a look at that now and come back to you. Okay, so I've had another play with this lower part of the tailgate, and I'm absolutely no expert in metalworking, etc., and certainly not in the oil can effect and how to fix it, but I've had a quick look at it, and I tried to figure it out for myself, and it seems to me like the real pinch point of this dent is right below the swage line here, so that's what was causing a lot of tension in the panel and therefore the oil can effect. So what I've done, annoyingly, the double wall thickness of this tailgate, the strengthening brace is right where that dent is. So what I've done, I've got my hands in as best I can, and just with my thumbs I've massaged and pushed that epicenter out as much as I can on this dent here, and it has made it look a little better, but it also has removed 90% of the oil canning. Now obviously there is still a little bit of it in this panel because it's an old Japanese truck and it's always going to have stuff, but the point is any oil canning you have pops straight back out again, rather than the sort I had before where you push it in and dink, it would stay in. So anything you've got now just pops straight out. So I can work the panel as it is in this outer layout, as it were, and I think that'll be okay. Now a lot of my marks have been worn off because I've been over with that large flat block again just to find where my low points now are, and fortunately the low spots are now a lot less, I should say, than they were, so they're smaller. What I think I want to do is put a key across this whole panel now, including the low spots, shoot it all in one uniform colour, so in a bit of high build or whatever, and then I can put a guide coat on which will allow me to really see the low spots, and then I can do my filler. But for this experiment, if you like, I was just scuffing up the clear coat on the original panel just to get a first view of where these low spots and bits of imperfections were. So that's what I'll do. I'll manually go over and scuff this whole thing with Scotch-Brite now. I'll hard line across here with masking just because I'm working on this. Obviously I wouldn't hard line a masking line on a panel normally, but for now it'll be fine. So that's what I'm going to do. Key everything up, shoot it in high build, let that dry, guide coat, flat that, and then we'll see where these low spots are and get some filler into it. So after a little bit of fiddling about, the lower part of the tailgate is now sorted. A couple of things I want to address. You may be looking at this or have seen the footage just now and thought there's an awful lot of filler going into that door. Well, it's actually not as bad as it looks. Basically, the tailgate is slightly wavy. Now, the filler isn't very deep. It's actually probably only at most 1 millimeter thick in places. These tailgates, and indeed most of the panels on Fourtrak, they're naturally wavy from the factory. They were kind of never perfect from new. They were okay, but they're never perfect. And as you know, with this project, I'm trying to make it, if I can, better than it would have been when it was new. So trying to dial out a lot of the waviness of these big straight panels was always going to be a bit of an issue. So anyway, that's why it looks like there's a lot of sort of filler and stuff in this door. It's really not as bad as it looks. The other thing that I want to emphasize is there's absolutely no filler on any kind of rust here. All the rust that was on this tailgate has been cut out and replaced with fresh metal, as you've seen. Nothing has been covered up. Nothing should be rotting through from behind. This is completely fresh metal. And as always with fresh metal, you do have to put a scad of filler over it to make it absolutely perfect. And obviously when I was welding, I was careful not to warp the panel as well. But, you know, there is always a slight element of that, again, sorted by a tiny amount of filler. So that is what the tailgate is now looking like. So I'm going to shoot it again in high build just to get it all sealed in there and ready for the next phase of bodywork, which won't be in this episode. It'll be down the line some way. But for now, at least, I'll get this in high build, and that puts a line under this tailgate and the quarter that you saw me do just now. So not going to waffle on too much more. I'm going to shoot that high build on the tailgate now and then just do a couple more bits to wrap up this episode, but I'll come back to you on those. Okay, now with that bit of bodywork done, I can turn my attention to these existing Fourtrak graphics. Now, as I said before, I'm pretty sure that on this Riviera 2-spec truck, these are the correct and standard badges. Now, I actually don't like these, I never have. They're kind of a 3D gel badge. When I do get this thing resprayed, I'm going to change the graphics to still Fourtrak graphics, but just a different style. I really don't like the sort of light green and grey gel look. It's a little bit too old school for me. So I'm going to take these off now, just so that the truck itself is ready to be prepped for paint. Again, I'm not going to be painting it anytime soon, but I just want these out of the way. So with that being said, a little bit of heat and a plastic scraper. I'm going to get these off, and I'll show you what it looks like without them. So there you go, on there for nearly 30 years, and now they're gone. And that style will not be coming back. These are the original gel badges, just a bit old school, aren't they? So, completely gone. I'm going to crack on and get the rest of these little badges off from around the truck. So here's an example of the interesting things you find when working on old cars. I was aware that this side of the truck had had some bodywork in the past, hence all the filler and stuff that was in this quarter panel that I've since cut out and replaced with fresh metal. So I was aware this had had a little bit of body shop attention. In fact, at this angle you can kind of see the orange peel on this door. So another reason why it's all going to get sorted properly. But looking at this gel badge on this door, you can actually tell someone has gone to great lengths to mask around it and then paint and clear coat everything with this masked off. You can see the original, I'd say almost 30-year-old paint there, nice and glossy, and then above it the orange peel aftermarket job that was done. So yeah, they went to the trouble of masking off this pretty intricate decal before painting that door. I guess I can understand why they probably couldn't find another one of these graphics. So it's probably more of a shame that I'm ripping it off and chucking it in the bin, but it's just not the style I'm after, so it's got to go. Anyway, that will get sorted, all this orange peel will get sorted, and eventually this will look 1,000 times better than it ever has done before. So then guys, that's going to do it for this episode. As you can see, the rear quarter panel's been dealt with and the bottom of that tailgate's been dealt with. They were the two main areas of bodywork on this Fourtrak that had been driving me mad. I'm glad that they're checked off the list. I've also gone and removed those gel badges, as you've seen. Small thing, but it makes a big difference getting those out of the way. So basically a bit of a short and sweet episode today. Still lots more to do. I said it several times, I'm not going to be painting this thing for a little while yet, but I'm just getting everything ready. Now, of course, there's lots more to do, just things that weren't as pressing as the issues you've seen me deal with in this episode. But that will all come in due time. Now, I know these Fourtrak episodes have been a little bit few and far between lately. That's just because I've had so much coming and going in the workshop. General stuff, light restorations, lots and lots of stuff. But I will endeavour to get another Fourtrak episode out as soon as I possibly can. It's all about sort of scheduling a time that I can fit it in, so clearing a week here and a week there just to get things done in phases. Anyway, don't want to bore you with that stuff. This one is now done. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please get ready for the next one. If you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. I think the vast majority of the people who watch this channel aren't subscribed. I'm really trying to get more people to subscribe and join what we're doing here. So, anyway, thank you ever so much for watching, and I will catch you, as always, on the next one. Cheers.